Hey friends, welcome to the PAULCAST podcast. It's your man, Paul Doherty, right here. And I can't wait for you to listen or watch this podcast today. I've got 3 interviews coming at you. One of them is with a renowned pastor, author, leader, Pastor Chris Hodges of Highlands Church. And we get into all kinds of great topics around mental and emotional health, all around my book, Mind Games, as well as his own mind games that he walked through, and he shares his story. It's really cool. Then you're gonna hear an interview between me and Liebscher. Now, these interviews are like me at my house on my phone with them, so they're very personal, but I'm bringing you into them. And so Liebscher is the pastor of Jesus Culture Church. You're gonna hear an interview between me and him, all about what it's like as an author, releasing a book, and just the highs and lows and the expectations and disappointments. And then also what he foresees right now in the church worldwide, why we need to be talking about this topic. And then lastly, you're gonna hear an interview between me and a guy named Joshua Broome. His testimony is incredible. I've actually never heard a testimony like his, and I don't even wanna give it away. You just gotta stay and listen to it. It's powerful. And he shares about his upcoming book called 7 Lies That Can Destroy or Ruin Your Life. And so him and I talk about, both of our books are published by the same publisher, and we both talk about mental and emotional healing and health. So I can't wait for you to listen to all of these, watch them. We're gonna just have one back to back to back, so it's all meshed together. So stay tuned right here on the PAULCAST. We got more episodes coming in this semester, and then we'll be taking a break sometime right after Easter, but don't miss any of these episodes. If you have missed a few in the past, go back and re-listen to them or watch them on our YouTube channel. Share it with your friends. Let's get right into the interviews. Welcome to the PAULCAST. There you are, Pastor Chris.
What you say, my brother?
What's up? Thanks for joining me.
Oh, I'm thrilled to. Congratulations on the book, man.
Hey, thank you so much. I literally forgot to bring it with me up to my office, so I'm sitting at, but the book's called Mind Games.
Yes, it is. I think I have a copy right here somewhere.
Oh,
you got my copy's right over there.
Yeah. Hey, I was just telling IG Live something crazy. Last night, I was at Oral Roberts basketball game, my alma mater, and I get this phone call at the end of the game. One of our staff members, who's a dear friend, had a heart attack, and it was crazy. He's close to my age. He's probably 7 years older than me, and rushed to the hospital. And I was just telling IG Live, I was at the hospital with my wife and some of our staff till like 1 a.m. And it was tough. Just sitting in that hospital and he went on to be with the Lord.
Oh my!
So we were praying for a miracle. We were praying for a turnaround, and it didn't happen. But what I was thinking about as I was sitting there, I was crying. My wife was crying because we were very close to this guy. But I was thinking about how the hospital is a lot like the church. You have all these people coming in, and nobody cares what you're dressed like. People came in their pajamas last night. People were in, their house shoes. Everybody's there because, one, we all love this person, but we all are praying for hope. We're all praying for a miracle. Yeah. And I was thinking about, people were talking about just their love for this guy. And then there were other people in the hospital room praying and crying for another person. And really this book, Mind Games, it's really like a mental and emotional ER. It's an emergency room for people who are overwhelmed with life, discouraged, feeling afraid, anxious. And as I was sitting in the ER last night, I was like, people need to know there's hope. People need to know after they lose a loved one that there's hope. And so I wanted to talk with you. Thanks for coming on, Pastor Chris. And
I'm thrilled, dude.
I want to hear about you. You've pastored for a long time. You're super successful. You pastor the largest church in the nation, maybe like top 5 in the world. I'm always following what y'all are doing. By the way, the fast and the 21-day fast and prayer, you guys are leading the charge for the church. And a lot of our members are engaged with you and following online. So thank you. But talk a little bit about just all these thoughts.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the book. And it's a conversation that the church has long needed to be a part of, honestly. It was one of those things, especially in our brand of church, where we have, strong faith that, you almost weren't permitted to bring your problem to the church. You had to have faith, and many people thought erroneously that if you had a problem, or if you had especially mental issues or any issue for that matter, that was a lack of faith. And that, of course, isn't the truth. We all are divinely saved. Our spirits are renewed, made just like Jesus, but this body and soul side of us struggle, like your friend did last night. I mean, nothing was wrong with his spirit. Nothing. He was completely perfect, and he went to heaven perfect because his spirit man was perfect. Bodies give up; they just do. I'm wearing glasses; my eyes gave out. Right. So we all have parts of our bodies, but the same is true with our soul. Man, our souls give up, right? And so and it's a conversation that I don't think the church has had for a while. I wrote a book a few years ago, coming out of COVID, out of the cave. Same thing. I went through a deep, dark depression season, and I'm not a depressed kind of a person. The glass is not even half full for me. It's always full all the way, and so, but I thought, just like you, and I'm so proud of you for being honest, because what they need is leaders like you and me, just to share real life stories, because you can be an overcomer. In this world you will have trouble, Jesus said, but take heart, I've overcome.
Yeah.
And so the gospel story isn't that if you get saved, your life is perfect. The gospel story is that if you find Jesus, you have a solution. And thank you for bringing us to that solution, my friend. So I'm proud of you.
No, that's so good. And I think, yes, like I was talking with one of our friends, Mike, the other night, and I think some people do buy into a false Christianity that once I get saved, God's going to deliver me and no weapon formed against me will ever prosper, and I'm always going to be free from trouble. But that scripture, no weapon formed against me will ever prosper. Like, one, that's taken out of context a lot of times for people in the middle of trials and circumstances. And the truth is, like you said, Jesus said, in this life you will have trouble, but take heart, you will overcome.
Yeah.
And I think that I love that you wrote a book about this. And I read your full book on the Daniel dilemma. I haven't got to read your full book on the cave, but I think a lot of pastors, and not just pastors, but a lot of people in the church are afraid to admit that they walk through their own depression. And I know you talk about that in your book. I talk about that in my book. Why do you think it is that, like you said, 20, 30, 40 years ago, there was such a faith stance to not talk about our problems and to not talk about any emotional, struggles? Why do you think that was the case? And now that you feel like something's starting to turn since 2020, since COVID, and really in the last 5 years, it seems.
Yeah, I really don't have a real answer for you other than the fact that it's very real. The stigma definitely exists. And even today, if someone said, man, I got the flu, you wouldn't think any less of them. But if somebody came to you and said, I'm struggling with mental illness, you think less of them. When really that part of your brain is just a part of your body, just like your eyes are. Or, if I said I broke my arm, you wouldn't think, oh my God, he's struggling. No, I just broke my arm. My arm's not working. But when our mind is not working well, sometimes we tend to put people into this category of, wow, you've got real issues. And really, the truth is, it's an organ and a part of our body that needs to be treated well, just like the rest of our bodies, And there are, so that's the great news, is there are real solutions. In the research that I did, Paul, I found out that most of the causes of anxiety and depression aren't genetic, but there are a few that are. My own son struggles. I have an autistic son who obviously, with that particular spectrum, that issue that he deals with, he struggles mentally. And for 2 years, he was suicidal. And he takes medication that totally, in his own words, Dad, this is the first time in my life all the wires connect. And he's living a very successful life through something that doctors were able to fix. But 7 of the 9 causes of depression aren't psychosomatic. They're not genetic. They're psychosomatic. Or psychosocial. There are things we're doing to ourselves, the way we live our lives, the busyness, the things we allow in our minds and our hearts, what we allow to land, our rumination, our loneliness. And those are some solvable things. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because I'm not really sure why there was a stigma, other than we just look down on people who struggle in their minds, when really that's just another part of a person's body that needs healing from Jesus. But sometimes there are things that can happen medically as well. So
Yeah. I was thinking about the medical part when I was writing this book. My publisher, they were talking to me and they were like, you've got to make sure that
people know it's not bad to take medicine. And I was like, absolutely. And I said, why would that even need to be mentioned? And they said, because there's a lot of pastors who are afraid to even admit that,
Mm-hmm.
and a hard time accepting that medical help is somehow a loss to people's faith or anti-faith. And maybe just talk a little bit about that in what you just described. You know, in the book Mind Games, we're talking about all kinds of different struggles. And some people may call disorders. Some other people may call, you know, just symptoms, feelings. But we talk about depression. We talk about anxiety. We talk about PTSD. We talk about just the racing thoughts. Like someone can't sleep at night because the racing thoughts constantly are there. Not just one day, but months, years. So talk about the encouragement for believers and maybe even pastors that are out there to understand how medical help and the Bible and all of the tools that God gives us can work together.
Well, yeah, I can talk about it because I personally live it, right? So because I have this son who actually, again, was born with autism. He didn't say a word before he was almost 3.5 years old. We didn't know what was going on. We had him tested, found out he had heavy metal mercury poisoning in his mind. Actually, did some chelation therapy on him, and immediately he's talking like a college professor. I mean, he was just rattling all of these things that were locked in his mind simply because he was dealing with this, you know, these toxins that were stored in his mind. So ever since then, we've been on this journey of helping him. You know, basically what his issue is that his body throws off the good stuff and he stores the bad. So your body's designed to, you know, to when you're exposed to toxins, and if you're breathing air, you're receiving toxins into your body, right? And so your body's designed beautifully by God to take those toxins and, you know, and eliminate them out of your body. His, unfortunately, stores them in his mind, and it creates this situation that he's going on. We then found out the foods and the things that cause that, and now he stays off of it, and he eliminates most of the toxins that come in his body. But he still went through a period of life where, you know, just nothing connected. And he loves God. He's a, you know, just a wonderful young man. He's the youngest of my 5 children. And so we started looking for medical solutions, Paul. I mean, we just said, you know, we've trusted God and believed God. And I still pray for him every day, by the way, to be completely healed of autism. I've never lost my faith on my son every day. And I truly believe God's going to heal him. But you know, if you break your arm, you're not going to say, well, I'm just going to believe God, this is going to come together. You're probably going to go get a cast on your arm, right? So that's not a lack of faith to treat something that's broken. And that's what this is. This is a part of his body, which is his mind, that is broken. And so anyway, when we found this particular doctor that was able to say, hey, look, I think we can try this with no side effects whatsoever, and he's going to be fine. And literally on the 3rd day of him taking this medication, I'll never forget it, Paul, because for 2 years, he said, Dad, I can't live. I have to die. And nobody knows how that feels unless you've been through it. When your own son comes up to you every day for more than 2 years and says, I have to die.
Wow.
We couldn't leave him alone. We had to travel with him everywhere. He was never alone because we didn't know if he might, you know, harm himself in some kind of way. It was scary, actually. And then when we found this doctor who actually was able to help him some, on the 3rd day, he said, Dad, for the first time in my life, all these wires are connected in my mind. I saw peace on his face, and I saw everything come together, and it was the most beautiful thing. And now he's, you know, he's on our maintenance team at the church, and he says he does manual labor. You know, he works hard, and he's just a good kid. And he's 26 now, long past that, and so still lives with us. But he's 26 years old and functioning well and just loves God and serving God and working hard. And so I know there's that part of it, but also don't discount the faith side that I believe that God can address every issue of our life.
Yeah.
Your marriage, your health, you know, your broken arm. I think God can touch every part of your life. And so I think it is important. And I think your publisher was right for you to say, hey, look, make sure people know. Because if we're not careful, even in our hope-filled messages of how you can control your mind, we could inadvertently communicate to people who are in that. I think one study said it's about 15% of the people who are struggling mentally. It is a genetic issue. 85%, it's usually a lifestyle related issue or something that happened to you. So like a hurt or a wound, or it just could be their busyness of life. They found out that if you live a sedentary life, if you're sitting in front of your computer 8 hours a day, that you have a higher likelihood of mental illness, right? So a lot of these things are lifestyle related. But the good news is that both solutions should be in play at the same time, and there's always hope in Jesus' name.
Yeah, there's always hope. And I love that we can have both. We can have faith in God to do the supernatural, the impossible. You and I are both faith believing, preachers, and we share the message of hope, but we also can embrace that God gives us the practical tools of a healthy diet, medical help, counseling, therapy, all the different tools that bring victory in the mind. And
Exactly.
and I forgot that you have 5 kids. I got 5 kids too. It is a lot. I know for you. And I want to ask you this: as a pastor who's raised 5 kids, you had 5 kids, I think, in your house while you started your church, and then obviously they all grew up at Highlands, and now your youngest is still with you. But tell me, because my oldest is 10 years old, my youngest is 2. I stepped in to pastor Victory right when our first child was born. So all 5 of them have been born since, I've been pastoring. Tell me just a little bit, because I know the mind games for pastors and leaders out there, I wrestle with just trying to please everybody, trying to help my kids, trying to help my wife, trying to help our staff, trying to be there for people. And I know my dad passed away at a young age, at 57. He had 4 kids. He was always helping people. Talk about the mind games for pastors and leaders out there. How do we win the victory of feeling like we're enough, learning to take a break, learning to have healthy rhythms, learning to conquer the mind games of getting up every Sunday to preach and wondering if people are getting anything out of our messages, and wondering if we're really doing okay at all this?
Yeah, so for me, that battle is won first thing in the day. So I there's a direct correlation in my life to my time with God in the morning, to the rest of my life, every decision, every fear, every how everything you just described works inside of me. And so probably one of the greatest tools or lessons that I've learned that I would pass on to people, and that is, it's not all's well that ends well, it's all's well that begins well. And when you can, before the kids get up and before the Sunday sermon and before all those things, have that time with God. That's been my source of strength, is that time in the garden every morning, where I walk with God. And I'm very faithful to it. I'm a disciplined person by nature, so it's easy for me. It's not easy for some people, but it's very easy for me. But I don't know where my life would be without taking thoughts captive first thing in the morning. Because this is what I've learned. I've celebrated this year, Paul. I don't know if you know this, but I celebrated turning 60 years old and 40 years of ministry.
I know this.
And so I called it my 60-40 year. So
Come on.
yeah. And so I have a little bit of experience, and I know how this works. But I would encourage people. There's something powerful about that morning time, because it's weird. It's almost like every victory you won today, something happens overnight, and I have to do it again every day. Give me this day my daily bread.
Yeah.
And so my encouragement for people is, even when you're walking through your victories, and it's like, okay, my messages did land, and I am a good father, and well, that was good for that day. There's a maintenance side of this. So we get the victory, but there's a maintenance side of this that I think God intended. And my personal belief is the reason why he did that is because he loves us being dependent upon him. He loves us needing him every day. He doesn't want us just to get the victory and like, okay, God, I got it. I'll let you know next time I need you. No, he wants this daily walk, this time with him every day. And so I kind of like, and this is not theologically correct, but get the spirit of it. But I kind of get saved all over again every day. I start over and say, Lord, today I choose to serve you, and I love you. I'm going to follow you. And today, God, I'm going to win the the battle in my mind. I have a set of declarations that I make every day about who I am. It's very short, but it's like a one page. I just read it, and I'm going to live for the church. I'm going to live for lost people. I'm going to serve my family today, God, and just get my mind right every single day. And that's one of the things I've learned about how do you navigate, 5 kids, a church, and all of that. It's just every day, every day, every day.
Yeah. One day at a
Yes,
time,
sir.
starting with the Word of God, starting in the morning. That's really good. Well, this is my first book. You've written, how many books have you written?
6. Not that many, just 6. Yeah.
What's your advice for me as an author? I'm trying to get this message out. And one thing I wrestle with is I never want to come across like self-promotion, look at me. But I also am like, I believe in this message and I believe people need it. And I really want people to get this message. And I would give the whole world a book if I could.
Yeah.
Uh, because I want people to know there's victory. Like they don't have to stay. And I know not everybody's like defeated or discouraged, but I think everybody faces mind games. Everybody has a battle in their mind, whether they are succeeding or whether they are feeling like they're failing in some area. But how do you balance as an author the desire to get the message out, but also that fear of like, I don't want people to think it's that I'm just pushing myself or pushing my book about for some reason, for other reasons,
Well, yeah, I hate to speak for others and including you, but for me, I just I don't need it. I think we get to a place where I don't need it. I don't need it to be successful. I don't need it. I want the message to be successful, but I don't need it. I think we have to find, all of us, for all of our ambitions, all of our goals. If that defines you, if the success of your goals defines you, you're probably in trouble. If
Yeah.
the success of your life is that just to please God, really, and to fulfill the Great Commission, honestly, I'm just trying to get God's agenda and God's vision done on this earth. That's what I wake up thinking about every day: is lost people getting saved people getting pastored, people being discipled, disciple people being mobilized, and all that to bring glory to Him. I have written some books too, and yeah, you get your heart and soul into them in that kind of way. But I tell the Lord every day that if He wants me to do something else, I'll do it. And if He wants me to work for somebody else, I'll do it. And you chose me. I'm in your army. Put me where you want to put me. I'm happy to serve you. So I think there's that part of it first, just to say, I'm going to release it. I'm never going to let the success of anything, including a book, define me. After that, though, Paul, I would say what I've learned to get the word out is just to figure out ways to make it a resource to the people who actually need it. So what I've done with my books is I've turned it into small group curriculum, because I think churches need small group curriculum. And so a lot of people are using it in that kind of a way. I've actually written, and I would encourage you to do it, either preach a series of sermons on this and then send us all your notes, and I'll help you distribute them. I have we influence about 18,000 churches,
Wow.
and we'll get your sermon message notes out, and let guys turn this into a series.
Wow.
And then, and that's what I've done with my books. If you like this, preach it and let me help it, use it for your church. And then, I'm sure your publisher will help you too, get this where they can order them in bulk at lower rates too, so that churches can get them in mass quantities, that if they want to do a series, we'd love to do a series on mind games. I think that's it's a catchy title, but it's something that everybody's battling with every day. But that's a great idea too. It's just, man, just get this as a resource to me, the mouthpieces of the body of Christ are pastors and communicators. And so let's get it out there to them. And so I'll help you too, man. If you want to turn this into some sermon series, and then if you preach them first, we can all watch how you did it too. And follow the pattern. And God, because one thing I've learned, pastors and churches are needing those kind of tools. And then, of course, that's going to get to the people. Wow. And there's a lot of people out there who could use this incredible message.
Man, thank you, Pastor Chris. That's amazing. I'm like trying to contain myself over here. I want to like do a victory lap. Everything you just said is something I haven't thought about. Like a workbook, that's an incredible idea. A small group study guide. I think, I forget about these ideas. And now that you're saying, I'm like, that's true. I went through a small group study guide as a teenager through John Bevere's books. And now that you're saying, I'm like, yes, people need a
Yep.
study guide on how to win the battles in the mind. So that's really good. Pastor Chris, thank you for taking time to talk. And I don't know if you got any last thoughts or anything you want to share, but I just really appreciate you. You are a gift to my wife and I, to the body of Christ. I texted you a couple months ago because I was just reflecting on people I really admire, really look up to and respect. And you are right at the top of that list. Pastor Larry Stockstill is
Who was
just,
my pastor?
yeah,
Yeah.
a hero. And
Yeah.
I just am really thankful for you, Pastor Chris. I want you to preach if you can this year at Victory. I think you always bring such a powerful word to the body of Christ. But any thoughts that you want to share here at the end, or anything else?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much, and I would always love to anything to serve you. I don't get out a lot to a lot of churches, but I do to the people that I love, and so it would be a yes to you and Ashley. So, and I'm proud of you guys. You guys stepped into a tough situation, when your dad just unexpectedly went to be with the Lord, and I have marveled honestly at the maturity, spiritual maturity that has been on your life with someone who was really just kind of thrust into that situation, and you built a great work, and I'm proud of you. I see you as a little brother, and I'm proud of you very, very much. And so I think my final thought for people is that there is hope. You don't get to the place where you say, well, this is just what I'm gonna be, because look, I was talking about this last January, and this was my resolution last year, and so I guess this is just who I am. And you've got to be careful of that. One of the lessons that I taught in Out of the Cave, the book on depression that I wrote, and I used the story of Elijah in the cave in 1 Kings 19. And one of the things that happened to Elijah is that he kept lying to himself.
Wow.
Here I am. I'm the only one left. And I'm going to be the next one to die. He was, and he knew he wasn't the only one left. If you go back into 1 Kings 18, they were already there. So, but he kept lying, and so we got to be careful of the lies that we tell ourselves. We need to speak that truth. Yeah. So the truth is what sets us free. And the word stronghold in the Bible, we have to break strongholds. About the 2 Corinthians 10 says, the word is ukurama in the Greek, and it literally means someone who is trapped by a lie. And the best picture of that, Paul, is when they train elephants, they chain them by the leg. But after they've been chained by the leg and they know they're chained, they can put a rope around that elephant's leg, and the elephant won't try to break it. The elephant could snap that rope with 1% of their strength. Wow. But they when they feel the tension of that rope around their leg, they think, oh, it's the chain, and it's not the chain. Okay, it's a lie. You've been trapped, deceived by a lie. And so we break strongholds. How? By taking captive every thought, mind games.
Yes.
So, and when we take captive every thought, make it obedient to Christ, what is that? That's the word of God. When it lines up, when our thoughts line up with what God says about who you are. And that's why I think these daily declarations of this is who I am. I'm a pastor. I'm a dad of 5. I'm a husband who serves my wife. I live for the lost. I'm going to raise up a generation of young leaders. And you start confessing the things about who you are, my daily declarations. Man, now you're replacing the lie with the truth, and that's the secret of being an overcomer. So, and thanks for giving us a tool, my friend. I really mean that. Thank you for giving us a tool to help people do that.
Thank you, and thank you for saying yes to coming to preach at Victory sometime, and thank you for believing in us. Thank you for championing just this message and sharing your story. I remember coming to several of your round tables with other pastors, and we all of us pastors, we have mind games, and you spoke so much encouragement, and you continue to do this. You pour your heart and your life into pastors, leaders, to help raise up more churches that are discipling people to win the victory in their minds. And one time you asked me something. You were at our church and you said, you were giving me some feedback because I asked for it. I said, hey, give me your honest feedback. And it wasn't like, perfect. It was like you had some good, healthy, constructive criticism. And I was discouraged. I was like, man, I feel so discouraged by that. And you go, why? And I said, because I thought I was doing better than I was. And you said, well, you're doing better, but you have room to grow. And you said, do you want to get better or do you want to stay the same? Because you can't do both. Yeah. And you had just a great perspective on the encouragement to always desire to grow and get better in areas. And it really helped me. That was honestly in 2016, changed that following year in a healthy way to bring just a greater level of excellence in our organization. And so I just appreciate you challenging all of us to keep growing and to not settle for where we are.
Thank you, my friend. It's been a joy to watch you grow and come back to one of my roundtables. I'd love to have you back again.
Yes, sir. All right. Love you, Pastor Chris.
Love you too, my friend.
Danny.
What's going on?
What up, bro?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting at the gas station.
Do you know how happy it makes me that this is where we're at right now, that we can just do these things forever at a gas station and we don't even care anymore. At first, when we were doing Instagram lives, we had to make sure everything was good. Now we're like, we can do it anywhere.
Dude, well, I know we were scheduled to have this earlier, but I had to go to the gym. I've not been at the gym enough this year. I was like, Monday's my day off. I'm going to go to the gym. We're going to have this IG live. And so I was a little too late to drive back to the office. So we're doing it here in the car.
No, I love it.
Great.
We could have a whole episode right now on how mental health is greatly helped when you take care of your physical health. That's what we could do. Coming out of the gym, why it's so important to take care of yourself physically and nutritionally.
Come on, bro. And then I just go to Come and Go and I get my big gulp. How are you? How was church on Sunday?
So good. God's been doing really good stuff. We went pretty hard after as Christians, we need to be submitting to the Word of God. I came up with my own phrase, Christian humanism. We believe in God. We just still keep ourselves at the center because we don't want to submit to his word. But yes, we had a great Sunday. God's been doing really incredible stuff. I've been really encouraged by what God's doing in our midst.
Come on, man. I was following the Pastors and Leaders Conference, just listening to all of it. It looked amazing. And I appreciate you, bro. Just you actually gave an encouragement endorsement, I guess, in my book that just came out. So thank you for doing that in the midst of your busy life and schedule. And you and I have had lots of conversations around just this whole message, this topic of mind games. So I wanted to jump on IG Live to talk with you just about life, leadership, pastoring, but also about this book and just your thoughts overall about just the crisis in our, not just in the world, but in churches across the world, of people battling mind games and how to win that. You know, what's your experience with that? So just you talk, man. I'm going to listen and then we'll just go back and forth a little bit.
Well, I told you this. I think I wrote this in the endorsement as well, that I think this is something we have to be talking about and we have to be equipping people around. I think it's probably not something we've talked much about. And I don't think that there's been a lot of, I know for me, and I love my parents. I adore my parents, of course. They did a good job with me, but I was never really taught growing up kind of emotional health and mental health and kind of the different things that you have to do to pay attention to that. And so, you know, I mean, I grew up as an athlete too. So part of what you do as an athlete is you just, you ignore pain and suck it up. Like it was like, it's a sign of like that you're a legit athlete. If somebody comes and goes, you know, how's your ankle? It's fine. It's fine. And you go play hurt. Like, you know, and so I remember, I'll tell you a funny story, but you know, as parents, my son's been play basketball his whole life. He's a senior, but you know, he'd be like this is probably in 6th grade. Us dads would be up there. And I remember sitting next to a dad and his son went down in the game, was like holding his ankle. And the dad just is sitting up there and he just yells. The moms are all worried and the moms are like, oh no. And the dad goes, get up. Just yells at his son to get up. My son, 8th grade, he's playing basketball. And one of his teammates asked to come out of a game because he was tired. I drove home with my son and I said, Lake, listen to me right now. If you ever asked to come out of a game. If you ever embarrass me as your dad by asking to come out of a game, son, you better have a broken leg, and I better actually see a bone protruding out of your leg for you to come out of a game. So my point is, we joke about it. We joke about it. And for athletes, I'm like, yeah, suck it up. But I think honestly, for people, that has kind of transitioned into other parts of life, and it's just hurting them. Like, we don't stop long enough to know, I think I've got something going on. I think something's happening to me. Even stop long enough to go, like, how is my emotional health? How is my mental health? Are there lies that I'm believing? What's happening with this thing, And we don't stop long enough. We kind of put our head down and suck it up and just work through pain. And I think that we're seeing the result of that in unhealthy ways. And we have many friends, obviously, that have burnt out and struggled or not thriving. And a lot of it is just like, we just don't stop long enough to go, no, something's going on, man. Like, you should pay attention to that. And what are ways to be healthy? So I that's one of the reasons why I think I appreciated what you were writing about, and why I think we need to be talking about it, because even everybody watching right now, either live or later, I think you got to stop long enough to go, is every area of my life healthy? Is my emotional life healthy? Is my mental life healthy? Is my physical life healthy? Is my spiritual life healthy? Like, it matters.
Yeah.
So that's why I love you talking about it.
Well, and something that I really love about you, the first time I met you was when we had to schedule to come and speak last second, 2 days before a conference. And someone was like, you should have Banning, my friend Mark. And I was like, yes, I've heard about Banning. I've never listened to him preach. And I called you, and you came at a moment's notice, preached such a powerful sermon. And I don't know if you remember it, but it was about gratitude. And you talked about the Lord. You talked about your son's basketball game, which now all three of my sons play basketball. On Saturdays, I'm at kids' basketball games all day. I'm at their practices during the week. But I'll never forget that story. And then after that, you followed up with me, and you were like, hey, I want you to come once a year, pull away, be around some guys, and just get encouraged and just have some iron sharpening iron. And since then, I've come every year that you've invited me to a group with pastors and with leaders. And it's so good and healthy just to take time to, like you said, to pull away, and then just to go, Lord, where are the areas in my mind or heart that I just need to draw closer to you? And there's other pastors and leaders that can just speak life in you. At those gatherings, you take time to really pour into us. And there's not a pastor out there, nor is there a person out there. Sorry, my phone's sliding. I apologize. This, like, I'm in my car.
You don't even understand how much I love every single moment of this right now. So fantastic.
Oh gosh, I feel bad. It's not professional, but it's me.
I'm getting less and less attracted to professional. I can tell you that right now. I'm more and more moved by just real life raw. But keep going.
Hey, speaking of that, yesterday I was driving to church with three boys. We have 3 boys, 2 girls, and my oldest son he's now old enough to sit up front with me. So
yeah, he is.
He's sitting up front. He feels like the biggest, coolest dude. He's a 10-ager is what he calls himself. Not a teenager, but a 10-ager, because he's 10 years old. But he looks.
Oh my gosh.
He looks at me and looks me up and down. He goes, Dad, I like the way you dress. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you dress in a way that makes everybody feel like we don't have to be perfect. And I was like, in this compliment, I started laughing. And he goes, no. He's like, it's just that you don't really dress sharp. And I was like, hold on. I go, I'm going to dress really sharp next Sunday.
Just suit, tie, tuxedo, the whole thing's happening.
Like, no. I do dress sharp, but I do wear jeans a lot. And he was like, no, like, it's good. He's like, there's a lot of preachers who only preach in a suit and tie. And he's like, I'm really glad you're like jeans. And
oh my
he's
God.
like, just make this be perfect.
You're like,
like,
thank you. Thank you. I think. Thank you.
So my wife laughed so hard about that. She was like, that's
classic.
Perfectionist. And so we're trying to help him to just learn that, like, hey, life is not perfect, But going back to what we were saying, I actually don't know what we were saying, but it was.
Yeah, I will say this. You were talking about pastors and different things like that. I will say, I think it's one of the reasons why community is so important. I personally think that when we get isolated, it, you're talking about other people sharpening you, other people in your life. There's something about community, like people that really are in your life, people that really know you, that really does bring health, that really does help with the mind games. So much of the mind games you talk about are just lies we're believing and different things that are going on. And there's something about community that comes in that goes, hey, what are you believing there? What's happening there? What's going on there? And I think it's, biblically, if we want to bring the Bible into it, but I think this would happen with Elijah. Elijah gets separated and isolated. And when he got isolated, he began to struggle. He began to struggle so much in his isolation.
Yeah.
And I think that we're not called just to struggle, but in order to really get to that place of strength and health and all the things that you talk about in the book, I think one of the main key factors is the thing of going against isolation by surrounding yourself with community and friends and all that stuff. I think is so huge.
Yeah. Well, and in the book, in Mind Games, I talk about the whole story of Elijah, and I remember you preaching on this, so I might have used some of your ideas from this.
I'm sure I stole somebody else's ideas, so it's a circle of life, my friend.
Well, I remember you sharing about how in Elijah's depression, he spirals from depression. Really, he allowed Jezebel's voice to get in his head. And I talk about in the book how you can have Jesus in your heart, but Jezebel.
That's such a good word.
Like you could be a follower of Jesus, but still have mind games of feeling like you're not good enough, or that you don't measure up in the eyes of certain people, or someone else's approval of you is so important that it drives you into a place of fear, intimidation, anxiety, and then in Elijah's case, depression and suicide, or suicidal thoughts, and the desire to just be done and I'm out. And God doesn't abandon him. God doesn't forsake him, chases him. And you said this in the sermon, sometimes all you need is a good meal and a good nap.
Totally, 100%.
So I totally used that in the book, but I talk about my own personal story and journey of just, walking through the struggle after my dad passed of our church, for just a lot of seasons of pain and bleeding and trying to find hope in that place. There's people out there probably watching now, or even will watch this later, that need to be reminded there's always hope. No matter how bad life gets, there's still hope. There's still light at the end of the tunnel. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things I appreciated about your book was you actually get real, raw, honest, share real life stuff, because people are going through extremely difficult things, and they're wrestling through that stuff. And the other thing, I know we're going to wrap up pretty quick, but the other thing for me is I love that you're talking about what you had to walk through the loss of your father, but also the fact that Jezebel's voice gets in Elijah's head. The reality is the generation we live in right now has more voices coming at them than any time in history. So like before, it was kind of the voice of your neighbor. It was the voice of a magazine you got. Now it's just like you wake up, open your phone, and there are so many voices. Sorry, I gotta sneeze. There are so many voices coming at you, and I think so much of the mental health, so much of what people are going through in their mind that you're addressing is because they're just being inundated with so many voices, so many lies, so much pressure. And I think we have, we're in this world, but not of it. We're going to have to learn how to, I remember a preacher talking about how Daniel lived above Babylon. That even though he lived there, he lived above Babylon. How can we live above all that's happening in the world that is really going after our mind?
Well, and let me ask you this, Manny, you're like 37 years old, 38?
Yeah, a little bit older than that. Give or take 10 years. Give or take 10 years, yes.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that people ever get to a place where there's zero mind games in their life? Or do you feel like it's going to be there the rest of our life? We just have to figure out how to win it.
Yeah, no, what I find is that the more aware you become, the more that you really hold on to truth, that when these things come, you're able to deal with them quicker.
Yeah.
Or you're able to see the two options. It's almost like a lie and a truth come and you go, oh, I know it. I choose the truth. So it's not like there's never wrestling. It's not like there's never multiple options that are trying to come at you, but you just kind of quicker get to, oh, that's truth. I'm going there. And I think that's the process of sanctification is that we're just constantly growing. We're constantly being developed. And so sometimes it's like, oh man, something happened with me and it just spun me out for 3 weeks. And then a year later, something similar happens, but it only spun you out for 3 days. And you're like, okay, all right. I'm making progress in recognizing truth quicker and getting to that place where I'm able to take thoughts captive. And like that type of stuff, it's just a continual process of growth.
I think that's really good. Some guy just pulled up with a massive subwoofer system.
Of course he did, dude. That's Oklahoma, baby. I'm assuming he's in some 4x4 jacked up truck with some camo on it and some antler stickers.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I assume in California. That's just what I assume in California is everybody's driving in Oklahoma.
Yeah. In Oklahoma, it gets wild. Well, and like to what you were saying, I think it's really good to point out that the older we get, not just in age, but spiritually, the longer we're following Jesus, we should be getting quicker.
Yes.
In our ability to win the mind games. Yes. And to not allow the enemy to mess with our heads.
Yeah.
And send us down a spiral of anxiety. I was talking with a pastor that you and I both know, and he's probably 70 years old. And this was a couple weeks ago. He said, Paul, the older I get, I still have to battle feelings of loneliness, feelings of discouragement, wondering if things are going to get better in certain areas that I've prayed for my family, my kids, grandkids. But he said, similar to what you said, I spend less time on the negative thought or emotion. And as soon as it comes up, like whatever that negative thought, feeling, emotion is, I immediately bring it back to prayer and believing God and then speaking it over myself. And that encouraged me because I was like, I think the body of Christ needs to know we all struggle with thoughts and feelings that are negative, discouraging, or just not God. But we don't have to succumb to those. And the older we get and the longer we follow Christ, I think the more we spend less time allowing the enemy to mess with us.
Yeah.
Being at the gas station, I'm going to use this prop for a second.
Here we go.
Cars always need to fill up, unless you're an electric car, then you just need to charge. But in the same way, spiritually, there's never going to be a week that goes by that we don't need to fill up in some way, where we start to get empty, or we get to that end of the gas tank and we're like, man, I need to pull over and fill up. And like you said, finding those practical, healthy ways, whether it is obviously reading our Bible, praying, that's daily, spending time in worship, making sure that we've got all the right. I loved your word on holiness that you shared on Instagram, making sure that we are pursuing holiness, not from a place of do's and don'ts, but from that place that you talked about in that whole clip of just knowing that I've been set apart to be set apart.
Yes.
And to understand what is holiness. And it's not just don't go to these movies, don't listen to this music, don't do bad stuff, but it really is pursuing God. And through that, we get filled up. And then practical tools. In the book, I talk about sometimes you do need to go see a counselor. Sometimes you do need to take a break from work or a break from your iPhone. Turn it off and don't be so distracted by social media. Like there's little practical things we can do to protect our mental and emotional health. I don't know if you got any words on that.
No, just be intentional. I think that what I find so many times is people are they're just running through life and just life is happening to them rather than them happening to life. And just the lack of intentionality. Just be intentional. Be intentional about whatever so for me, it's just that. It's that I want to be intentional. And so if I go see a counselor, if I get up early in the morning to pray, if I take time to go work out, if I am surrounding myself with community, just be intentional. I think people just kind of let life go all over the place, and they're not just stopping and saying, I'm going to be intentional with my life. And I think that people, this is the lie you got to break. They feel powerless, and they feel like they're a victim. And so, which is a whole nother issue. But the issue is I just feel powerless. So what can I do? I'm just powerless. What can I do? I feel overwhelmed. And so I'm just going to not do anything and go, no, take a step forward. Start moving toward. You're not powerless. Nowhere in the Bible does God say, hey, there's nothing I can do and you're powerless. It's the opposite message that we get. So just move forward. Take a step forward. Lean in. Have conversations with people. Get some elders in your life that are pouring into you. Go to a counselor. Just start moving forward and just don't stay in powerless mode.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. Well, hey, I want to just say this too to everybody who's watching. Pastor Banning Liebscher is such an awesome pastor, but he's also just a great friend. And you called me the week my book came out, maybe in the day it came out, just to see how I was doing, just to see if my mind games were during the book mind games coming out. And then you encouraged me. You told me a story about one of your books and a season you walked through. Just the reality of any person who pursues a dream. And for people out there watching, like, look, we all have a dream in our heart. Maybe it's to write a song, maybe it's to release an album, maybe it's to write a book, start a business, or start a ministry, or I don't know, whatever that dream is. And there's highs and lows. And I was so encouraged I told my wife, I was like, man, Banning called me and encouraged me a lot just around the whole thing of releasing something you've dreamed about for years. It finally comes out. And there are a lot of emotions because you're like hoping it's going to do amazing. And then there's the reality that it may do good, but it may not be everything you wanted it to do, and how to navigate those mind games on the other side.
Writing a book, for everybody listening right now, writing a book is maybe one of the most vulnerable, raw things I've ever done. And it's hard to describe, but you're just like, here you go. And I feel like I'm completely naked and I'm giving you something. And it's definitely like, it's its own thing. Maybe some guys don't deal with it. Guys that are on some echelon somewhere that just, everything they do is just unbelievable all the time. But for the rest of us, it's raw and vulnerable.
It really is. And I appreciate you speaking life and encouragement and just being a pastor to pastors. But hey, any last thought before we close out, just around the book, the mind games, the topic, or life, just encouragement to.
Yeah. Listen, we're not on here just to promote and sell stuff, but I would get the book because at some level, that's the intentional that I'm talking about. Move towards growth. And I don't really, honestly, I don't care if you would say, hey, I'm really struggling right now, or if you just say, I just want to continually get better and grow and get healthier. All of us are in a spot. Well, all of us face tough stuff. All of us are dealing with lies that are coming in the mind and different things that are happening. But whether you're like at a low point or whether you just want to get better and grow, that's why I think resources like this are so helpful.
Man, thank you, Ben. Hey, do you have a new book coming out anytime soon?
Listen, I could show you a pile of notes I'm trying to compile together but man, writing's hard too, man. Like you really have to go, okay, I'm going to go do this thing. So the answer is yes, but it's a ways off. You know how it goes. Like it's a ways off. I'm just now at the beginning of starting something again, but I'm dragging my feet. I can tell I'm dragging my feet a little bit because the level of commitment you have to do to jump in on that. But yes.
All right. Last question. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? 49ers?
It's not even a question, dude. The Niners. It's not even like, listen, last time the Chiefs, here's what I'm going to tell everybody right now. Last time the Chiefs beat the Niners, it was 2020. And we all know what happened right after they won. The world shut down. So this year, the Niners and Chiefs in 2020 played, right, in February. And then just a few weeks later, the world shuts down. This year, the Niners are going to win, and revival's going to break out. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be redemptive rather than the world shutting down. Rather than the world shutting down with a pandemic. So we're going to believe for that. We're believing for the Niners. Come on now. We're NorCal.
Hey, but I do like that Brock Purdy is just like a sold out believer and just unashamed of the gospel. I love that. So
we're all rooting for Mr. Irrelevant. I'm telling you right now, we're all in Northern California. Just come on, 6'2", Mr. Irrelevant guy.
Well, bro, I love you, and you got to come preach soon at Victory. We are grateful for you for just all your friendship and your kindness.
My Oklahoma family. I love you guys.
All right, thanks, Benny.
Do it again. All right, guys.
Later, y'all. There you are, bro. You're in your car too.
Let's go. Yeah, man, I'm on the run.
Come on, man. How are you doing? I should have worn my hat too. I got my hat somewhere around here. I could have worn my hat backwards like you.
There we go. Yeah, so I'm preaching in Mobile, Alabama. So there's a college ministry out of Mars Hill Church here that my wife and I have been coming every year, and we do a purity conference where I'll preach and then I'll take the guys, she takes the girls. But since we've got a 3-week-old, it's I'm running solo this week.
Come on, bro. 3-week-old. Okay, so for everyone who's watching today that does not know who Joshua Broome is, tell them a quick snapshot, who you are, how many kids you have, their ages, all that.
Yeah, so my name is Joshua Broome. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I'm married to my wife, Hope. We've been married for about 8 years, and we've got 4 boys. So Cannon is 5, Lincoln is almost 4. His birthday's in like 3 weeks. We got 2-year-old Judah, and then Abel was born a whopping 3 weeks ago. So being someone who is called to preach the word in across the land, it's a lot on my wife. So she's a gift to me, and she allows me to preach the word all over. So I did about 61 events last year.
Wow.
And it's been a blast, but it's a lot on my wife. So hopefully, with the book coming out, there'll be a lot of travel this year, but hopefully next year it'll be about half of that.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Well, bro, I'm excited for your book. Okay, so tell everyone what the book title is.
Yeah, so I love the synergy between our books because it's really, mind games and 7 lies that'll ruin your life. So 7 lies that'll ruin your life. It's really about the heart struggle that we have because your heart actually desires the things of this world, but the things of this world lead to emptiness and brokenness. So, so 7 lies that'll ruin your life. And it's really not about my story. My story is pretty radical. While I was in the adult film industry for 6+ years, did over 1,000 films, had a lot of success there. Grew up in a fatherless home and really tried to mitigate the gap that I had mentally and emotionally because I believed because I didn't have something I needed to achieve something so that I could feel something. And that's a struggle that a lot of us have, specifically men. And it's just amazing to see, a guy that thought my life was over. I was certain of it. I left that industry 11 years ago after making a plan to take my life. God kind of met me in that space, ran from him and everyone for 2 years. And then I heard the gospel, and 9 years ago, my life was radically changed. Went to Liberty University, got a degree in Christian ministries, and got discipled. And God just started opening up doors, and I kept sharing that word of reconciliation that transformed my life, that saved my life. So
come on,
it's a gift. Yeah,
dude. I love your testimony, your story, and I love the connection with mind games and 7 lies that will ruin your life?
Yeah, 7 lies that'll ruin life. Because it's really about, so if you believe a lie to be true, it's really this mental battle. While if you believe a lie to be true, it becomes true to you, and through that lie you create your own worldview, and you're looking at yourself, the world, relationships, you name it, through a faulty lens. So that's as a man thinketh he is, so it's like, man, if you believe lies, that's your reality, and you create a worldview out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I talk about in the book too. In my own version of that whole thing, I talk about believing the lie of life is never going to get better, things are going to get worse, God's finished with me, and then reversing that and speaking the truth. Hey, my best days are
Yeah.
still in front of me. God's not finished with me yet. I do have a purpose. I'm here on purpose. So I kind of walk people through probably what you do in your book, getting renewed back to the truth. Like, every day, today's Thursday, I was talking with a friend this morning. I had a meeting and we were talking about how we're in this season of life as parents where one day can feel like a week.
Yeah.
And so the next day and you're like, wait, that was yesterday? That feels like a week. Um, but when you're in a state of mind where you're overwhelmed with life, like thankfully we're not overwhelmed with life, we're just parents. But when you're in a state where you are overwhelmed and life feels so almost impossible to succeed and impossible to win, you could start believing like, man, is things ever going to get better? Will I ever see light at the end of the tunnel? And what I talk about in the book, and probably in your book too, is that the enemy wants us to believe there is no light. There's no end of the tunnel. It's only going to get worse. And that is such a lie, because no matter how bad it gets, Jesus still has hope for every person out there.
Yeah.
And maybe talk a little bit about that in your own journey.
Yeah. So for me, I grew up without a father. And so what was unique about my upbringing, because fatherlessness is unfortunately normative in today's culture. But what was unique about my story was that while my father was not in my life or my home, the small town in South Carolina that I grew up in, he was in that town. So I saw the thing that I didn't have, and I saw the thing that made me feel inadequate on a regular basis.
Wow.
And then what honestly what escalated it was that we were in a broken environment. My mom got married when I was about 7. So my mom had me when she was 16. So all this happened when she was 16. But she's amazing. My mom is amazing. But growing up without a father, and then me seeing him, and then him having the, like, not only being there and me wanting for him to be in my life, but then he gets married and he has the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and all the things, and then I'm seeing this life that I don't have access to, and it makes me feel rejected. And because I feel less than, I operate in I need to become more so I don't feel less than. And this takes me into, pretty much anything that you could do to receive affirmation. I was doing those things, good and bad. And for me, I got to a place where I was doing modeling and acting. I moved to Hollywood. I was having some success, and I made one decision that changed the trajectory of my life. I did one adult film, which just, destroyed every avenue, everything that I'd been building. And all of a sudden I believed a lie that, well, because I did that, I have to continue doing that, because it's so, our mind tells us it's so much easier to compromise than to change. It's so easy to stay stuck where you are, because because change in a positive way is always going to cost you something.
Yeah.
And for me, I believed, well, but because I felt less than, because of my father, and I did bad things, all of a sudden I was an invaluable bad person, so I might as well continue doing bad things. And I was in the porn industry for 6+ years, and then still this mindset, well, if I make enough money, if I become popular enough, if I do, achieve this this fictitious like version of, I talk a lot about fame, because like fame is not like something tangible, it's not real, like, so, because I was long ago, if you ask me like what do you hope to accomplish, I would say I would want to be famous. And famous is not something you can become, because it's not measurable. It's like how much money equates to being famous. How many people need to know your name to be famous? So what you're really desiring, I want to be needed. I want to be known. I want to be seen. So that's the journey I was on. And I achieved all those things. I made the money. I became famous. I did all the stuff that the world says that equates to satisfaction. That equates to joy. That equates to all these things. And when it didn't work, I was like, well, what's the point? I love the way, like, I've heard you talk about how, like, you know, that introspective conversation on the overpass. And for me, I was flying back from Atlanta to LA, and I made a very detailed plan to take my life. And it was because I believed, because like my biggest goal at the time was to become a father. I'm not to get a girl pregnant, but to be a father. Because I knew I didn't experience that, and I knew that that's what I wanted to become. So I wanted to become a father. I wanted to be a husband, and I wanted to use my creativity to impact people in a positive way. And I thought I'd lost access to all those things. And then I made a plan to take my life, and then there was God interceded through a person, and Ephesians 3:20 is real. Is, you know, the end of it, like, Ephesians 3:20 is real. Like, God stands ready to do exceedingly abundantly more than you can ever hope or imagine. And his plan for your life is not as good as you wish it would be. It's better, because God made you, and if you align your gifts and talents and personality and charisma with what he wants you to do for his glory, not only will you be happy at the end of the day, but you'll be satisfied because you'll be doing the thing that God made you to do. And it's this struggle where it's like, I don't think I can do X, Y, and Z. But if you're playing mind games with, man, I'm comparing myself to the person to my left or right, you can't even celebrate when you're winning. And this was that, like, cyclical plan that I was in. No matter what I had, it was never enough. I was never enough, because I believed I was worthless, because it was something I didn't have. So, man, when I gave my life to Jesus, that shame and guilt was removed, but it was a process. And for me, the book really, I would say the two things that the book highlights that I would love to talk about, and that I would love to hear a perspective on this, is two things. So this imitation version of intimacy. Well, obviously, because I was in the porn industry, I have a unique voice speaking into that. Average age of exposure is 8 years old. And then, you're talking about $100 billion industry. You take NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, add them all together, and you're still $1 billion short of how much revenue that industry is making on a daily basis. 33% of all the data transferred on the internet is that type of content. So it's problematic, and I feel called to speak to people in the church, because I think that the integrity gap that exists within the church, and while we're not boldly proclaiming the gospel, is that there's this shame and guilt that's holding us back from the capacity that God is calling us to step in. And like, that is my life calling. And I thought, like, okay, God saved me, so I've got to go back into chaos and save the people in the industry. But that was not what I was called to. So, like, I would say, I'll let you riff on that. But I would say that the greatest enemy of sin is you believe a lie. And in the book is about, well, I believed lies to be true, but there's truth, in a person. And he said, not a dot, not an iota of my word will pass away until it's all fulfilled. You can trust him. And if you trust him, then trust is born out of love. And if you understand that he loves you, and he loves you to the extent that he went to the cross and he died for you, and John 14:15 says, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. You'll see that God's word is a gift. It's a gate and a weapon. It protects you and it equips you, and it dismantles and destroys lies. And that's what I had to do. I had to dismantle and destroy lies. And that's what the book is about. Like, hey, this is a lie. I believed it. It impacted my life in this way. Here's what's true. Here's how I implemented this truth. And this is how there was applicable change in my life. And this is how you can apply it to your life as well.
I love it. Well, and I love so much of what you said. I think, one, everything that's happening in the world is also happening in the church. The difference in the church, we actually have the victory through Jesus Christ, through his word,
Amen.
through the cross, renewing of our minds. But like you said, you know, you could have gone back in the industry. God's called you to reach people in the church that are held captive by sin, by lust, by the lies of the enemy. And I love that you dig beneath the outward behavior, because when we look at someone who's living a life that we go, hey, that's not right what they're doing or how they're living, there's always something deeper. And
Oh, yeah.
the thing that I went to counseling several times in my lifetime, but I remember going to sit with this retired pastor, him and his wife, and they're in their 70s, and they love pastors. They have a heart for pastors. And they said something that I'll never forget. I share about this in the book Mind Games, but they said, you can't bring the 100% like love and healing power and grace of God if you don't believe that he's done this for you and you've fully allowed him to do that. And I was like, yeah, I know that, but they were digging beneath. They were like, somewhere in there you have a hard time believing that people are going to stay in your life, because I talk about in one of my chapters the lie of the enemy that says I'm not good enough for people to stick around very long. And I grew up as a pastor's kid where people would come and go out of our church. You know, a family would be there for 5 years, they would leave, switch to another church, and I always took it personal. Even if my parents didn't take it personal, I took it personal. And so then I had this feeling of like, who's going to leave me next? Like, who's getting fed up with Paul, and who's just unhappy with Paul's performance as a human being? Like, felt like I was always doing tryouts, auditions to
Right.
like me and how long they would stick around in life. And I remember just listening to this pastor, retired pastor, counselor, and like a therapist speaking into my life. Like, you need to believe, one, that you're worthy. You're worthy of the love of God, the love of people, and you don't need to be chasing their approval to feel worthy or to feel good enough. And that's the deeper lie. Like, what causes the behavior that you're talking about is the bigger problem than the actual behavior. Because we can treat surface level behavior, but if we don't deal with the lie, that behavior comes out in another way, a different category, a different year in our life. So I think going after that lie of the enemy is so important, dismantling it, destroying it, but also identifying it. What is this lie that you're believing? You're not enough. You're not loved. You can't be loved. You're not worthy for people to stay in your life. Like, whatever these lies we believe, they drive us to do things that we're not proud of, or they lead to just us pushing people away that actually do love us, and we don't know how to receive their love. So I love that you're talking about that. I think your book and Mind Games, my book, they're definitely, it's awesome that we're also connected to the same publisher. Shout out to Faith Words. I think, you know, I love that we're talking about this, because more people do need to understand what's causing the emotional health problems. And if we do win on the inside, we can win on the outside. If we can dismantle the lies on the inside and start believing the truth, then we can start living the truth on the outside and stop living the lies of the enemy. You want to say any other thoughts on that? Any other words on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, it's, you know, it is our nature to, you know, to question God. And, you know, if that leads us to a place to dig for his truth, it's a good thing. But if it leads us to believe that we can create our own autonomy, and we get back to the garden saying, did God really say, then that's the place that leads us into darkness. But I mean, to your point, it's like, man, how do I eradicate a behavior or, you know, a thought process from my life that I want to change? I can't just man up. You know, I can't just do enough of the good things where I change. The way that I used to say it is, for me, you know, I did a lot of things that I wasn't proud of. So I thought, well, if I put enough good dirt on my bad dirt, I won't feel dirty. You know?
Mm, good
But
way to,
yeah, it's like we have this heart issue, and it's like, you know, like when Jesus is talking about if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off.
yeah.
He's always like, it always goes back to the heart, and there's never ever in a time in the existence of man, that you can fix an external problem, by an external means. It's always internal. He always goes back to the heart. Always goes back to, Ezekiel saying, like, I will give you a new heart.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we need to strive for. But I would just say, we all are, like, really, we're all just like desiring of love. We were made, by love, to be loved by the one who made us. And I think we try to fill that gap with any and everything we can. And that's the enemy's plan A, B, and C, to kill, steal, and destroy, specifically the believer. Because on the latter part of that verse, the abundance that Jesus offers, the way that, the father of lies is trying to distract you from that is to get you to believe that you are less than, that people are not going to stick around for you, that you're not worth loving, that you're not capable of loving. And that always stems from a wrong thought process. And that it's even deeper than that, because it's your why. Your why will always drive your what.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to, remove a behavior from your life, like, yeah, there's this neuroscience around the habitualness of your behavior, but the root of why do I do the thing, it's there's a lot of neuroscience around just like cognitive dissonance, which, and if we're talking, theological terms, that it's Romans 7.
Yeah.
Why do I do the things that I ought not do? Why do I struggle to do the things that I want to do, yet I find myself doing the thing I don't want to do? Like, why do I do that? Why do I know two things to be true and simultaneously I'm operating like I'm a walking contradiction? Like, why do I do it? Because we're in this struggle with our flesh. And if we didn't struggle, if we didn't doubt, if we didn't, we are, we've got this sin problem. And it's a gift that we've got Jesus to lean on. But we have to lean on him. We can't fix ourselves. We can't rely on our flesh. We can't rely on doing enough good things to make us good. It's like, man, the intimacy that you desire is in the presence of God. And I would just say the last thing, it's like, something I say often, normally people just go crazy about it. But like, I polled like 10,000 people. I said, I say intimacy. What's the first word that comes to mind? 91% of people said sex. But sex is not exclusively intimacy. Intimacy is proximity to God. And until you understand that that's the thing that your heart longs for the most, you'll be dissatisfied in every area of your life.
So good, Joshua. Bro, you're full of wisdom, man. Love you share. I can't wait for your book. When does your book officially come out?
March 5th. So, I think yesterday was like the official 30-day. Man, so I'm in Mobile, Alabama for I come back tomorrow, but of course I leave and my wife FaceTimes me. She's like, "Look," and there was like 3 boxes of books like at our house. I was like, "No," but I was like, "I can't wait to get home." She was like, "Do you want me to open them?" I was like, "No, wait, because our kids will who knows? They'll become coloring books or something."
Yeah, my kids have already not all of them, but one of them in particular got the book and just started writing on top of it. I'm like, okay, well,
yeah,
God, but no, that's awesome, man. I'm so pumped for you. It's your first book, right?
yeah,
First of
yeah.
many. God's gonna give you more and more. You're based out of Dallas. How do people find your book, your content? Where do they go?
Yeah, so on all platforms, I am Joshua Broome is my handles on everything. If it's not verified, it's not me. There's hundreds and hundreds of fake ones. So if it's not verified, it is not me. And if you want me to come speak at your event or want to connect with me, send me an email or anything like that, joshuabroome.me is my website. So speaking schedule, reaching out to me, events, all that good stuff.
Come on, bro. I'm excited. We're gonna stay connected. We'll continue to find ways to just engage and interact with each other, and you speak here and different stuff like that. But Joshua, first, here's kind of a total non-serious question. Are you a fan of either teams that are in the Super Bowl right now?
Man, so I've always liked. So my uncle was like the closest thing to like a best friend and like somewhat of a father figure, and he was a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan.
Okay.
And I preface that by saying, growing up in South Carolina, you know, there's no team there, and then eventually there was the Carolina Panthers, but in South Carolina, the practice facility is there. That's not the same,
Yeah.
right? There might as well be the North Carolina
Yeah.
Panthers.
Yeah.
Just because, and it's in Rock Hill, which is on the state line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's tough. So it's like, man, you gotta love Mahomes. You gotta love Kelsey. You gotta love that defense for the first time. Like, it's incredible defense. But man, Brock Purdy loves the Lord,
Come on,
man.
I
He
love Brock
loves
Purdy.
the Lord.
I-
Like, there's people who identify as Christians, and there's people who act like Christians, and so it's like, man, I hope most of those players know the Lord, and they come to know the Lord because the ones who do. But man, when you think about like someone who is an ambassador for Christ, someone who's a carrier of that word of reconciliation, I've seen a ton of content with Brock Purdy, so it's like I can't not root for him, even though my wife is a Hawkeye, so she went to Iowa, he went to Iowa State, so bitter rivals. But George Kittle is a Hawkeye, so as long as he's throwing to him, so I'm gonna say my prediction: 49ers 24-21, but I wouldn't be mad if KC won either.
Okay. Well, man, I love you. I'm excited for you. And even though we've never met in person, I love that we get to connect on here on social media. And man, whenever you run into people who are just in need of winning that battle in their mind, share the book Mind Games with them. I feel like your book, my book, both of them can help a lot of people out there to win on the inside. And I love just that you reached out to me and you were like, dude, I think our books are so in alignment with each other. And I love that you pieced that together. I can tell that you are thinking in the whole context of kingdom connection. Yeah. How guys, people out there, and I want to just say this before we close out, people who are listening, watching, you said something that I thought was really good. You said most of the great impact I've seen has come through collaboration, has come working together with other people and recognizing just that we can both reach people. And so I'm sitting in the Home Depot parking lot and I have Home Depot employees coming my way towards the car. I have another meeting here in like 15 minutes. So I got to let you go, but I love you, man. And it was so good talking with you. And for everyone who's watching, listening online, go check out Joshua's new book. Go check out Mind Games, 7 Lies That Could Ruin Your Life. And let's win this year. Much love. Thank you, Joshua.
Love you, bro.
All right, later.